Studies show many couples over 60 actually experience richer intimacy than they did in their younger years, yet others feel completely disconnected. What makes the difference? That single question unsettles and inspires at the same time. Imagine sitting across the table from someone you've shared decades with, knowing them better than anyone, yet suddenly realizing you no longer feel close. For some, the flame has dimmed into silence. For others, surprisingly, the years have deepened passion, tenderness, and joy in ways they never thought possible. The truth is that intimacy after 60 isn't about the number of candles on the cake, it's about how we choose to show up for one another. Some couples discover that with fewer distractions, no young children, no frantic careers, they finally have the space to focus on connection. They laugh more, touch more, and open up more freely. Yet others, weighed down by routine or fear of change, allow distance to grow until it feels like they're sharing a house but not a heart. So here's the real challenge: what makes one path lead to closeness and the other to quiet disconnection? Is it about health? Desire? Or is it something deeper, something simpler that often gets overlooked? That's what we're going to uncover today: 5 powerful secrets that can transform love and intimacy in your 60s, 70s, and beyond. But before we go any further, if this already resonates with you, don't just hit that new hype button. It's YouTube's way of lifting seniors' voices so more people over 60 can discover this message. You can hype 3 videos a week, and every single hype makes a difference. So hype this video now, subscribe if you haven't, and stay with us, because the first secret may surprise you. It's not what most people expect when they think about intimacy after 60. Callista was 67 when she first realized her days felt strangely predictable. A retired teacher, she had spent years pouring her heart into classrooms, lesson plans, and the lives of her students. Now the chalk dust had settled, and her world had slowed down, but so had her sense of romance. She still loved her husband deeply, yet the spark seemed to have slipped quietly into routine. Conversations revolved around grocery lists, medical appointments, and the weather. Evenings passed with television filling the silence where laughter once lived. She didn't feel unloved, just unseen. Ephraim, 70, was her opposite in temperament. A lifelong jazz enthusiast, he still played old vinyl records on weekends, letting saxophone notes fill their small living room. To him, music carried the kind of intimacy words could never capture. Yet when it came to expressing himself, he kept emotions tucked away. Stoic by nature, Ephraim believed physical closeness and romantic gestures belonged to their younger years. "We've outgrown all that," he would tell himself. In truth, he still longed for connection, but pride and habit held his words back. Together, they embodied a quiet paradox: 2 people who cared deeply but drifted slowly apart, not because love had vanished, but because assumptions had taken its place. Callista assumed Ephraim no longer found her attractive. Ephraim assumed Callista no longer needed affection. Neither spoke those fears aloud, so silence grew like ivy over the walls of their marriage. This distance wasn't unique to them, it mirrors what many couples over 60 quietly face. After decades together, routines can replace romance. Care can look like chores instead of tenderness. Intimacy can fade not through conflict, but through unspoken hesitation. The danger lies not in lack of love, but in failing to nurture it. Their story shows a universal truth: even the strongest relationships can stall when small gestures disappear and voices go unheard. But here's the hope: love doesn't wither with age. It pauses, waiting for courage, waiting for the choice to turn silence into conversation and routine into renewal. For Callista and Ephraim, the distance was never final, it was simply the moment before rediscovery. Secret 1: Rediscovering touch beyond the bedroom. For weeks, Callista had felt a quiet ache she couldn't name. It wasn't loneliness, Ephraim was there beside her every day, but something softer, almost invisible. They shared the same rooms, the same meals, even the same routines, yet there was a distance she couldn't shake. One evening, as they sat on the porch swing watching the sun slide below the horizon, she noticed something startling: Ephraim hadn't reached for her hand in months. The realization hit harder than she expected. It wasn't about passion or fireworks. It was about the silent reassurance of touch, the way a hand resting on hers used to whisper, "I see you. You matter to me." Without it, everything felt muted, as if part of her had gone unnoticed. Ephraim, on the other hand, believed those gestures weren't necessary anymore. In his mind, decades of marriage spoke louder than holding hands or brushing against her shoulder. He thought, "She already knows I love her. Why do I need to prove it again?" What he didn't realize was that love doesn't age the same way bodies do. It doesn't retire at 60 or vanish with the years. Love survives on reminders, on small, repeated signals that say, "I still choose you." By withholding those gestures, Ephraim unintentionally starved the very closeness he longed for. That summer evening became a turning point. As the cicadas buzzed and twilight deepened, Ephraim shifted on the swing and, almost without thinking, placed his hand gently over hers. No words. No explanations. Just warmth. Callista's breath caught in her chest. That single gesture unraveled weeks of distance. It told her more than any speech ever could. She didn't need roses or grand gestures. She needed that touch, proof that she was still his companion, his partner, his love. In that ordinary moment, intimacy bloomed again, not as passion, but as presence. Touch is often misunderstood. People think it belongs only to youth, to the first rush of romance, or to fleeting nights of passion. But the truth is, the older we get, the more sacred touch becomes. A hand on the back as you pass through a doorway, fingers interlaced during a walk, a gentle brush of the cheek before bed, these are not small habits. They are living reminders that age doesn't erase desire. It refines it. For Callista and Ephraim, rediscovering touch meant rediscovering that they were still lovers, not just cohabitants sharing a roof. That is the first secret. Intimacy after 60 begins with presence. Presence is communicated through touch, not only in private moments but woven into the everyday. A partner's hand on yours says, "You are not invisible. I still see you, and I still choose you." The couples who thrive are not the ones clinging desperately to passion from the past, but the ones who dare to touch as though every day together is brand new. So if you're watching this, don't underestimate the power of touch. Hold your partner's hand while waiting in line. Rest your palm gently on their shoulder when they're speaking. Hug them and don't be the first to let go. These gestures might look ordinary from the outside, but they carry the extraordinary weight of devotion. They remind your partner of who you have been, and even more, of who you still are, companions, lovers, soulmates. Do you remember the first simple touch that made you feel connected? Share it below, because your story may be the reminder another couple needs today. Secret 2, asking new questions, even after decades. It happened on a quiet afternoon when the house felt unusually still. Callista sat at the kitchen table, listening as Ephraim's favorite jazz record spun softly in the background. She had heard the song 100 times before, its notes wrapping around the room like smoke. But that day, instead of letting it drift past her, she leaned forward and asked something she had never thought to ask in more than 40 years of marriage. "What does this song mean to you?" Ephraim looked startled, almost caught off guard. For a moment, he hesitated, as if unsure whether to answer. Then he exhaled slowly and admitted that the song had carried him through a heartbreak long before they met. He spoke about sitting alone in his early 20s, playing the same record on repeat, using the music to nurse a wound he had never spoken of. Callista listened, realizing she was seeing her husband in a way she hadn't for decades. The man she thought she fully knew still carried hidden layers, stories, and feelings she had never touched. That one question shifted everything. It wasn't about jealousy or the past. It was about discovery. Callista realized that even after a lifetime together, intimacy thrives when we remain curious, when we dare to ask questions that go beyond the surface. What dreams did you once give up? What memory still makes you smile? What fear do you still carry quietly? These questions open doors to deeper connection, reminding both partners that they are still evolving, still unfolding, still worth exploring. So often, couples assume they already know each other completely. Decades of shared experiences create a sense of familiarity, but that familiarity can easily turn into complacency. When curiosity fades, so does intimacy. The truth is, no matter how long you've been together, your partner is not a finished story. They are a living book with chapters still being written. By asking questions, real, heartfelt ones, you not only learn something new, you also send the message, I want to know you, still. For Callista and Ephraim, that conversation about a single jazz song sparked a series of new discoveries. They began asking one another things they had never thought to before, questions about childhood dreams, private fears, even the silly habits they once hid. Each answer peeled back a layer, reminding them that love isn't about having all the answers but about choosing to stay curious enough to keep asking. That is the second secret, never stop asking new questions. Intimacy grows when we recognize that our partners are not the same people they were at 20, 30, or even 50. They have grown, changed, and evolved, and so have we. Curiosity bridges that growth. It takes a quiet evening, a simple question, and the willingness to listen. So ask your partner something unexpected tonight. Not about chores, not about schedules, about their soul. You may be surprised by what you hear. And remember, the next secret is the one that challenged Ephraim the most, and changed everything. Secret 3, Speaking Desires Without Shame. It started with a hesitant confession. One evening, Ephraim sat quietly in his chair while Callista flipped through an old photo album. The pictures showed their younger days, trips, birthdays, family dinners, and one photo in particular, the two of them at a cousin's wedding, wrapped in each other's arms, dancing under strings of lights. Ephraim looked at the picture for a long time before finally whispering, almost to himself, I miss that. Callista raised her eyes, surprised. You mean dancing? He nodded, embarrassed, his voice low. I do. But my knees are stiff now, and I'd probably look ridiculous. For Callista, the moment opened something inside her. She had longed for those slow dances too, but she had stayed silent, afraid of seeming childish or needy. So she spoke her truth, I miss it too. I don't care if we stumble or sway off rhythm. I just want to dance with you again. That exchange, simple as it was, became a turning point. It showed how often couples bury their desires under layers of pride, shame, or fear of rejection. What could have remained unsaid became the spark that reignited their intimacy. From that night forward, Friday evenings took on new meaning. They pushed aside the coffee table, put on music, sometimes jazz, sometimes old love songs, and began to dance. At first, their steps were clumsy. Ephraim laughed at his stiff knees, and Callista giggled when he spun her too quickly. But instead of feeling embarrassed, they leaned into the imperfection. Each misstep became a shared joke, a new memory, a reminder that intimacy is not about perfection but about presence. Over time, those Friday night rituals became sacred. They looked forward to them the way they once looked forward to date nights. Dancing turned into their way of saying, we still choose joy, even now. This is the lesson of the third secret, intimacy deepens when we dare to speak our desires without shame. Too often, partners hide what they truly want, whether it's physical affection, new adventures, or simple rituals of closeness, because they fear being judged, dismissed, or misunderstood. But silence builds walls. Speaking honestly, even if the words feel awkward, builds bridges. When Ephraim admitted his longing, and Callista voiced hers, they transformed silence into connection. Couples who thrive after 60 are not the ones who pretend they have no desires left. They are the ones who acknowledge that longing is part of love. They give themselves permission to want laughter, to want touch, to want new experiences together. And when those desires are spoken, even the smallest ones can reshape a relationship. So ask yourself, what desire have you held back from your partner out of fear or pride? Maybe it's as simple as wanting to take a walk together at night, to hold hands in public, or to start a ritual of morning coffee talks. Whatever it is, speak it aloud. You may discover, as Callista and Ephraim did, that your partner has been waiting for the same thing. Has one honest conversation ever changed your relationship? Share your story in the comments. Your words might inspire someone else to finally speak theirs. Secret 4. Rituals of togetherness, not just random moments. One of the biggest shifts in Callista and Ephraim's relationship came when they stopped waiting for intimacy to just happen. For years, they assumed closeness would naturally fall into place the way it once did in their younger days. But what they didn't realize was that love, like health or happiness, doesn't thrive on accident. It needs intention. It needs space. It needs ritual. It began almost by chance. One evening, Callista prepared 2 cups of tea and brought them to the porch. The sky was painted in soft streaks of orange and pink, the air calm after a long day. She handed 1 cup to Ephraim and sat down beside him. They didn't speak much that night, just sat, sipping slowly, watching the light fade into dusk. The quiet felt different. Not heavy, but peaceful. The next evening, without planning, she did it again. And then again. Soon, Ephraim began anticipating it, setting out the mugs himself before she even suggested it. What started as a simple act became their ritual: sunset tea on the porch, no television, no phones, no distractions. It was their sacred pause, a daily moment of togetherness carved out of ordinary life. There was no pressure to fill the silence with chatter. Sometimes they shared memories, sometimes they laughed about little things, and sometimes they simply listened to the evening sounds together. That ritual reminded them, day after day, that intimacy isn't found only in grand gestures or dramatic moments. It lives in consistency, in the repeated act of choosing one another. The beauty of rituals is that they anchor a relationship. They give couples something to look forward to, a rhythm that says, "This is ours." For Callista and Ephraim, it wasn't about fireworks or passion, it was about the quiet comfort of knowing that, no matter how busy or distracted the day had been, they would meet again at dusk with steaming teacups in hand. That consistency built trust, safety, and a renewed sense of belonging. This is the 4th secret: couples who thrive after 60 don't rely on random moments of intimacy. They create rituals that weave closeness into the fabric of their daily lives. These rituals don't need to be elaborate. It could be morning walks, nightly prayers, Saturday breakfasts, or even dancing in the living room once a week. What matters is that the ritual is intentional, repeated, and shared. Rituals remind us that intimacy is not about chasing constant excitement but about cultivating stability and connection. They transform ordinary minutes into extraordinary memories. When practiced over time, they become the heartbeat of a relationship, the steady rhythm that carries love forward. For Callista and Ephraim, sunset tea was more than just a drink. It was a daily renewal of their bond, a reminder that they were partners first and foremost. It taught them that intimacy is not always about grand passion but about the gentle strength of showing up, again and again. And yet, the final secret was the one they resisted, until it saved their marriage. Secret 5. Choosing vulnerability over silence. For all their progress, Callista and Ephraim still carried a silence that neither dared to break. It wasn't about chores or routines this time, it was about fear. Ephraim had lived with a quiet ache for years, convincing himself that Callista no longer found him attractive. His hair had thinned, his body had grown heavier, and the stiffness in his joints made him feel clumsy. Instead of asking, he retreated behind jokes or silence, believing it was safer not to know the truth. Callista carried a similar fear. She had watched herself age in the mirror and wondered if Ephraim saw only wrinkles where youth once lived. She longed for reassurance but felt foolish for wanting it. Pride held her back, whispering that she should be grateful for companionship alone. So both of them stayed quiet, letting assumptions breed distance. 2 people who deeply loved one another walked side by side with the same unspoken fear, both thinking the other had lost desire. The breakthrough came one night as they sat together in the living room. Ephraim's voice broke the silence. "I'm afraid you don't see me that way anymore." His honesty hung in the air, raw and uncertain. Callista's eyes filled with tears. She admitted she had been carrying the same fear. In that moment, the walls between them crumbled. What had once been a heavy silence turned into connection, because vulnerability has a power pride will never match. That moment of truth transformed their bond. By daring to speak the unspoken, they discovered that both still longed for closeness, not the kind defined by perfection, but the kind defined by honesty. Vulnerability made them stronger, not weaker. It reminded them that intimacy after 60 isn't about flawless bodies or youthful energy, it's about daring to be fragile in front of the one person you trust most. This is the fifth secret, choosing vulnerability over silence. The temptation to hide fears and longings behind routine is strong, especially later in life. But silence creates distance. Vulnerability, even when uncomfortable, creates closeness. When you open your heart, you give your partner permission to do the same. Couples who thrive are not those who never fear, but those who face fear together. A whispered confession, a trembling truth, or even a nervous question can unlock connection where silence has locked it away. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is courage, the courage to be seen fully, with flaws and fears included. So ask yourself, what truth have you been holding back, hoping your partner will just guess? Speak it aloud. The very words you fear might be the bridge back to intimacy. What's one truth you've held back but wish your partner knew? Share it below. Your story might be the spark another couple needs to find the courage to speak. When Callista and Ephraim first stepped into retirement, their days looked steady on the surface but hollow underneath. Silence had become their companion, routine their master. They ate dinner together but rarely shared more than a few words. Nights passed with the television glowing in place of laughter. It was a marriage that appeared stable, yet inside both of them longed for more. The journey through rediscovering touch, asking new questions, voicing their desires, and building rituals was not easy. It required courage, awkward conversations, and the willingness to step into vulnerability. But slowly, the shift became undeniable. The porch swing where silence once pressed heavily became the place where Ephraim reached for her hand again. The kitchen, where background music had filled space, became the stage for new conversations, questions that unearthed forgotten dreams and private stories. Their living room, once only for watching television, became a Friday night dance floor where clumsy steps led to bursts of laughter. And every evening at sunset, steaming teacups marked a ritual of presence and togetherness, their quiet ceremony of love renewed. The transformation was not about becoming who they once were, it was about creating who they could still be. Love at 67 and 70 didn't look like love at 25, it was gentler, slower, but deeper. It was no longer about proving desire but about affirming connection. Each secret became a thread, weaving their relationship into a new symphony, one composed of small gestures, honest words, shared rituals, and daring vulnerability. From silence, they created music again. Here is the key takeaway: intimacy isn't lost after 60, it is waiting to be rediscovered. It lives in every small decision to reach, to ask, to speak, to show up. Callista and Ephraim discovered that love does not fade with age, it matures. It becomes less about perfection and more about presence. Their story is proof that closeness is not a relic of the past but a gift available at any stage of life. And if they could rediscover passion and connection at 67 and 70, so can you. If this story opened your heart, don't let it end here. Let it be the start of something in your own life. Don't just hit that new hype button. It's YouTube's way of lifting seniors' voices so more people over 60 can find hope and rediscover the love they thought was gone. You can hype 3 videos a week, and every single hype spreads this message further, showing the world that love after 60 is not fading, it is evolving. Share this story with a friend who may need encouragement, someone who sits quietly in their own living room wondering if love can still be alive. Let them see that transformation is possible. And subscribe to Ageless Love and Life, where we continue to tell stories, uncover truths, and celebrate the beauty of romance, intimacy, and companionship later in life. Because love doesn't fade after 60, it evolves into something deeper, richer, and more enduring. This is your reminder: it is never too late to hold a hand, ask a new question, speak your desire, create a ritual, or risk vulnerability. The life you want together is still waiting. All it takes is the courage to begin.